You're listening to this today because you care deeply about teaching yoga. You didn't come into this work casually. You trained, you've invested in yourself, you've shown up, and you've probably built your schedule around the classes that you're teaching and your students and the studios that you're teaching in. And for a while, it works. But at some point, something starts to feel off, and you can be busy and you can still feel like you're treading water, and you can be teaching a lot and still notice that nothing really changes month to month unless you add more hours or more classes. Now, today's training isn't about doing more, okay? It's about looking at the structure underneath your business and really asking whether you can carry this forward into the next chapter, into 2026. So when I talk about becoming a profitable yoga teacher, I'm not talking about chasing trends or turning your work into something that is unrecognizable to what it is today, but I'm actually talking about sustainability and creating a way for your yoga business to support your life, not just fill up your weekly schedule, okay? So the reason that I'm calling this a foolproof plan is because it's focused. It actually asks you to stop scattering your energy and to make one clear decision about how you want to work, or how you want your work and your business to actually function going forward. Because one of the biggest patterns that I see with yoga teachers is overcomplication. And you probably recognize this yourself, like you have too many ideas, too many directions that you want to take things in, too many things that you want to do, and also too much time teaching in person and trying to squeeze everything else, all of those ideas that you have around all of the classes that you're teaching, and it becomes exhausting, doesn't it? And is also the reason that so many yoga teachers really just kind of stall, or they stay stuck at the same income level year after year. So today, I really want to walk you through why the model that most yoga teachers rely on has limits, and what actually changes when you shift that model, and what becomes possible when you begin to simplify instead of adding more. So you don't need to take notes or try to map everything out right now. This is about understanding the shift first, and the clarity comes before the strategy. So as you listen, I want you to just keep one question in mind. Not what you should be doing next, but what you want your teaching to feel like, okay? A year from now, what do you want your teaching to feel like? What do you want your business to feel like? So let's just slow this down for a moment and really look at the model that most yoga teachers are still operating from. So in-person teaching is where nearly everyone starts, okay? You do your yoga teacher training and you start off by getting classes in studios or gyms, or maybe setting up a class in a community space. Perhaps you even delve into securing private clients and teaching yoga privately, one-to-one. You might also be thinking about retreats, okay? So it's familiar, isn't it? It's very tangible and it's meaningful work, and for a long time, it can feel like it's enough. You know, you show up, you teach, your students benefit from your classes, and you get paid. The issue isn't that this model is wrong, it's that it's built in a way that has a ceiling that most yoga teachers don't fully see until they're actually bumping up against that ceiling. So every part of your income is tied to your physical presence, okay? Your time, your energy, your availability, and there are only so many hours in a day, and there are only so much capacity in your body as well, because, you know, once your schedule fills up, that's it. You know, the business stops growing unless you push harder. And that's really where things start to kind of quietly unravel, okay? So your calendar, your schedule gets full, doesn't it? But the money doesn't change in the same way. And so you might add a few extra classes or take on a private client, but it's really incremental and there's no real leverage there. Every increase in income comes with an increase in output from you. And what happens? It creates pressure, doesn't it? It actually creates burnout. And so it means that you're constantly managing your energy instead of building something that supports you. It means that when you want to rest or travel or, you're ill or you simply just want more space in your life, it all feels like risks rather than choices. And every time off, can feel complicated. If you cancel classes or the studio changes the schedule, right, then the income disappears. And if you step back, everything pauses. Like there's no separation between you and your business. And over time, this does something very subtle. You might still love teaching, but it starts to feel heavy, right? You begin kind of organizing your entire life around your timetable, your social plans, family time, holidays, even your own practice. Like often you have to work around all of those things and when you're actually teaching. And none of this is talked about enough in the yoga teaching space, right? And so from the outside, it looks like things are successful. You've got a full schedule, you're booked out, things are going well, you're known in your local area and in the studios. And, underneath all of that, there's often this kind of sense of heaviness, as I mentioned already, but also kind of stagnation, because it feels like, no matter how much effort you're putting in, you're circling the same income level year after year. And what makes this especially frustrating is that many yoga teachers blame themselves, right? They think that they need to teach better classes, or they need to market themselves harder, or they need to add more offerings or say yes to more opportunities. But the limitation isn't personal, right? It's actually in the business model. It's structural. It's built into that business model that you're operating from. Because the in-person teaching, studio class model was never designed to scale, right? It was never designed to grow without demanding more from you. And it works beautifully as a foundation, as a place to start, as a base. But it struggles as the sole engine of a long-term business. And this is why many yoga teachers reach a crossroads. They don't want to stop teaching. They don't want to abandon what they've built, but they also know that continuing in the same way isn't going to create the freedom or the stability that they want going forward. So if your income still lives entirely inside that weekly schedule that you've built, it's going to be very difficult to build beyond the present moment. You're always maintaining what you've built. You're rarely building something new or creating something new. And this is where things become overcomplicated, because instead of really just, stepping back and changing that structure, many teachers start stacking things on top of an already full model, right? More classes, more workshops, more trainings, more platforms, more content, more effort, right? And what happens? This creates burnout. Of course it does. And so what's missing is a different way of thinking about how your work creates your income. And once you see the limits of this in-person model very clearly, and I hope you do now, the next step becomes much easier. Okay, you stop trying to squeeze more out of everything that's already at capacity, and you start looking at how to build something that can grow without demanding more hours from you. Okay, so I want to show you what changes when you shift the model itself and why that shift opens up far more possibility. Once you start to see the limits of relying only on in-person teaching, a different question naturally comes up. Okay, and it's this. If my time and energy can only take me so far, what needs to change so that the business can grow without asking more from me. Okay, and this is where the shift happens when you move towards a model that is not entirely dependent on your physical presence. And something important really changes because your business is no longer confined to your weekly schedule. It's no longer limited by how many hours you can teach or how much energy you have on a given day, right? And so instead of trading time for money, you start building something that exists beyond you showing up in the room. And that change alone creates a sense of relief for many teachers because the pressure eases. Yeah, the feeling that everything depends on you being available all of the time begins to soften. And another thing that changes is how your work compounds over time. Because with in-person teaching, every class stands on its own, right? You teach it, it's done, and then you move on to the next one. And there's very little carryover from week to the next week. And so when you shift that model, your effort starts to build on itself. You know, the work that you do today continues to support you tomorrow. Yeah, your ideas, your experience, your teaching all begins to live in a form, right, in a new container that can reach people without you having to be there all the time. And so this is where many teachers first experience a sense of momentum because their work is finally allowed to stack. And it also changes the relationship that you have with growth. In a time-based model, the studio-based in-person model, growth feels like pressure. Yeah, more students, like reaching more students. And of course you want to reach more students. It means more classes, doesn't it? Because you can only fit a certain number of mats in a room. And more demand means less space for you, right? Everything expands outwards until it becomes completely unsustainable. Like you hit that wall, you hit the ceiling. And in a different model, your growth can feel very spacious, right? It can feel limitless actually when the momentum starts to build and you can support more people without stretching yourself. You know, you can actually increase your income without increasing your hours, and this alone shifts how you relate to your work. Another important shift here is stability. So when your income comes only from teaching in person, it's vulnerable, isn't it? You know, if the studio changes their schedule and drops a class, or there's dips in the seasons, or, you know, travel, life events, or simply exhaustion can create sudden drops. And there's very little buffer in that. Now, a different structure gives you more control. It allows income to continue even when you step back, you slow down, or you choose to focus elsewhere for a period of time. That doesn't just affect your finances, it affects how safe and supported you feel inside your business. And that is so important, okay? So this is also where clarity begins to matter more than ever. Like when you're no longer relying on teaching whoever shows up to a class, you have to be clearer about who you're here for and how you help them. Okay, so what happens is your message that you're sharing, it sharpens. Yeah, your teaching becomes more intentional. You stop trying to speak to everyone and you start serving someone very, very well. And for many teachers, this is the turning point where their work starts to feel very cohesive and everything starts to connect. And this is where the idea of simplicity really comes into play, because a lot of people assume that shifting the model means building something more complex. You know, multiple offers, endless content, advanced systems. And in reality, the most effective businesses are often built on one clear idea delivered really well. Simplicity is what creates momentum, and your focus creates the traction that you build, that compounds. And when you stop trying to do everything and commit to one direction, your energy changes, like your decisions get easier, your confidence grows because you know what you're building and you know why you're building it. And so this is what I mean when I talk about a foolproof plan. Not something that promises quick wins, but something that is hard to derail because it's grounded in focus and clarity and, importantly, structure. So once you understand why the model needs to change and what opens up when it does, the next question is usually a very practical one. And it's this: what does this actually require of me? This is where I want to slow things down again, because this is often where yoga teachers start to overthink and overcomplicate something that is meant to be very straightforward. Now, this plan does not require you to become someone else, right? It does not require you to be louder or more visible than you're comfortable with, or to suddenly turn your work into something that feels out of alignment. What it does require from you is clarity. Clarity about who you want to serve, clarity about the problem you help them with, and clarity about how your teaching supports a real shift in their life. Okay, so when you rely on in-person teaching, a lot of this clarity stays quite loose. Okay, people come to class for many different reasons, and that works in that setting, especially in a studio, okay? That's not really your business, is it? It's not your business. And so when you build something that lives beyond that room, clarity becomes essential, because this is about your business, you know? And it's not for marketing reasons, but because clarity is what makes your work transferable. Yeah. And so another thing that this plan requires is ownership. Okay. Ownership of your community, ownership of your message, ownership of how people experience your teaching outside of a studio. And this can feel unfamiliar at first, especially if you spent years working inside other people's studio businesses. But ownership is also what creates freedom. Okay. When you're no longer dependent on studios or someone else's decisions, you start to regain a sense of agency within your business and a sense of freedom. And it also requires a willingness to simplify. And this is often the hardest part, like letting go of the idea that progress comes from doing more, right? Letting go of half-built ideas and side projects and, choosing one direction and allowing it to happen. Yeah, allowing it to evolve, allowing it to deepen, essentially. And that takes time, right? It's not built overnight. It requires commitment from you for the long haul, because now you are building your business, right? Now you're building something that is going to be truly sustainable. To go back to what I said at the very beginning, sustainability is what this is about. As many yoga teachers are highly capable, creative people. And that creativity is a strength, but it can also lead to scattering energy across too many ideas at once. So this plan asks you to focus that energy instead of spreading it thin. It also asks for a mindset shift around value. Okay, because in-person teaching conditions you to undercharge. Yeah, you undercharge for your time and you overgive your energy. And when you shift the model, you're no longer pricing hours. You're valuing transformation, your experience, your perspective, your ability to guide someone through a change. And that can feel uncomfortable at first, not because it's wrong, but because it's unfamiliar. So this plan works when you allow yourself to step into that role with confidence and integrity, right? Rather than minimizing what you offer or trying to keep everything small. Another important piece, and I've touched on it, is patience. Yeah, not patience in the sense of waiting endlessly, but patience in building something properly. Yeah, a clear foundation, a clear direction, a structure that supports growth rather than going for quick results that don't last. And this is why so many teachers struggle when they try to shortcut this stage. They jump straight into tactics without making the underlying decision about why they're building and why. They jump straight into tactics without making the underlying decision about what they're building and why. So this plan asks you to make that decision first, to decide that your business is not just a collection of classes, because it's not, but something that can really evolve and grow and support you over time. And this is where the word foolproof comes back in. Okay, the reason that this plan works is because it's anchored. And once you make this shift, everything else that you do starts to line up. Okay, your priorities become clearer. Your energy stops being pulled in every single direction. Now, up until now, I've been talking about this business model at a high level. And when I talk about shifting your business, I'm talking about creating a digital asset. And for you, that digital asset is an online course. An online course is not just content, and it's not, definitely not, a library of classes bundled together and called a course. It's a structured way of solving a specific problem for a specific group of people using your teaching. And this works when it's built in the right order. And that order means more than most people realize, okay? So to keep it simple, because that's the theme for today, there are 3 core steps behind this plan, okay? The first step is getting very clear on who you're here to serve and the problem that you help them with. Like, this is the foundation, and it's not a broad audience such as everyone who likes yoga, and it's not a vague outcome either. It's one type of person and one main challenge that your work supports. So this is where your message comes in, and this is where everything starts to align, okay? So once you have that clarity, your communication changes, your content feels more natural, it's easier to create because you're speaking to one person, you know the topics that you're speaking on, right? Your confidence grows because you know exactly who you're helping and why, and this is where momentum begins. Like, this is the big shift that can really happen in your business when you step into this. The second step is building and nurturing a community around that focus. Now, this means consistently speaking to that person about the problem that you solve and creating a space where they can connect with your work and with your teachings. And this is how trust is built, okay? And you need trust to make sales. And you need sales to create a business. Without that, you don't have a business. So it's how people begin to feel supported by what you offer in your work long before you offer anything for sale, okay? So you're not trying to persuade people or convince people. You're simply guiding people who already recognize themselves in your content and in what you're sharing online. The third step is creating and launching the online course itself. Now, this is where validation becomes essential. It's an essential piece. Many people miss it. And rather than guessing what to create, okay, because you don't want to do that, you validate the course topic with your community that you've been building, okay? You shape the course around what they've been telling you they want help with, and you price it in a way that reflects its value and the transformation that it supports. And then you launch it using a clear, structured process with intention, with a method that really allows people to understand the value of the course and decide whether it's the right fit for them, okay? So when this step is done properly, the course becomes a true digital asset in your business, something that can be sold, again, refined over time, and really supports your business and you without demanding more hours from you. These 3 steps work together. Clarity around who you serve, a community built around that clarity, and a validated, well-positioned online course launched with structure and intention. Now, when teachers skip one of these steps or they try to do them out of order, things can start to feel very heavy and confusing. But when they're done in a sequence, the business starts to feel much more simpler. And so this is why I call this plan foolproof. It's not because it's complex or clever in any way, but because once these 3 pieces are in place, everything else starts to line up. Your message sharpens, right? Your content becomes easier. Your efforts compound, and the business finally has room to grow. So let's bring this all together then, because what I want you to take from this training is not a long to-do list or a sense that you need to overhaul everything that you're doing all at once. It is clarity around what actually takes your business forward, what actually moves the needle, what actually makes you money. And this is about becoming more focused, getting clear on who you serve and the problem that you help them solve, building a community around that focus, and creating and launching a validated online course. And that is it. And when those 3 pieces are in place, your business stops feeling scattered, right? Your content starts to make sense to you because now it's speaking to one person. And the effort that you put in, you're really starting to build the momentum. Everything is building, right? Because it's all connected, okay? And your income, importantly, the important piece, is no longer fully dependent on how many hours you can teach in a week. And perhaps the most important piece, not even perhaps, it is the most important piece. You get to reach and teach more people, and not just in your local area, but all around the world. That ceiling, those walls disappear. Finally, you get to create the impact that you really want to create as a yoga teacher. And that is everything. That is everything. So let me be clear. This is not a foolproof plan that guarantees anything overnight. Okay? Anyone or anything that claims that, stay well clear of. And it doesn't remove the need for effort. Okay, but it's hard to mess up when you're building it in the right order and when you have the right support. Once this structure is in place, everything else you do has a very clear purpose. So if you're listening to this today and you're realizing that your business has been built almost entirely around in-person teaching, this is the shift that matters most going into 2026. Not another class, not another workshop, a different foundation, right? A different model. And today, I really want to help you see that path clearly, because the next step is learning how to build it properly. And that's exactly what we're going to be doing inside our upcoming 7-day freedom immersion. Okay, we're going to create that clarity around who you're here for. We're going to shape your message, right? We're going to build the foundations of your community and guide you through creating and validating an online course that feels aligned and that's truly valuable. Okay, so if this training today has helped something click for you, freedom is the natural place to take this further. This is where this plan becomes something tangible rather than just an idea. And you don't have to have it all figured out yet. Okay, you just need to be ready to build with clarity instead of guesswork. And I'd love to support you inside Freedom Immersion if that's the direction you are ready to move in. Okay, so make sure you join us. It's coming up soon and it's one of the most fun events that we do all year. Okay, this is the time to get that online course created and out into the world. Thank you for listening today, guys, and I'll see you again very, very soon.